Look, I never asked to be a dimension-hopping hero. My life was perfectly normal, thank you very much. It was all about surviving high school algebra, avoiding the cafeteria's mystery meat, and, just trying to get my ancient gaming console to not overheat. My name is Eddie Luke, and up until last Tuesday, the most magical thing in my life was finding an unopened bag of chips at the bottom of my backpack. But then came the door. Not just any door, mind you. It was the door to the storage closet at the end of the hallway in my house. The one that always stuck and smelled faintly of mothballs and my grandpa's old fishing gear. It was just a boring, plain, white-painted door. Or so I thought. It all started with a weird feeling, a tingle in my fingertips. I was just trying to grab an old blanket for a movie night, and as my hand reached for the doorknob, something buzzed. It was like a tiny jolt of static electricity, but deeper, warmer. The brass knob, usually cold and stubborn, felt like it was humming under my palm. I chalked it up to weird house stuff, old wiring, maybe a ghost who really hated being disturbed. But when I turned the knob, the air in the hallway shifted. The smell of mothballs was replaced by something else, something earthy and strange. Like damp soil after a storm mixed with a scent I couldn't place, something almost like lavender, but wilder, sharper. I hesitated because I'm not a complete idiot. When a door starts acting like it's auditioning for a sci-fi movie, your first instinct isn't usually to swing it wide open and yell, "Hello, any aliens in there?" But curiosity is a powerful and often stupid thing. The humming grew louder, not just in the knob, but in the wood of the door itself. I could feel the vibrations through the floorboards. It was like the whole house was holding its breath. I pulled the door open just a crack, expecting to see dusty boxes and forgotten junk. Instead, I saw a sky. A sky that was a deep, swirling, impossible shade of purple. My brain did a complete system reboot. It just couldn't process the information. A purple sky in my storage closet. It made no sense. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and looked again. It was still there. Through that narrow opening was not a cramped, dusty space, but an open landscape under a violet twilight, a gentle, cool breeze carrying that strange floral scent wafted out, ruffling my hair. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. This wasn't a trick of the light. This wasn't a dream. My boring, ordinary closet door had somehow become a window, or maybe a gateway, to somewhere else, and my hand, still tingling, felt like it held the key. Taking a deep breath, which probably wasn't the smartest move given the circumstances, I pushed the door all the way open. The sight that greeted me stole the air from my lungs more effectively than a punch from a heavyweight boxer. The purple sky wasn't just a patch of color, it stretched out in every direction, a vast canopy of amethyst and lavender, with slow-moving clouds that looked like spun sugar dyed in grape juice, and hanging in that sky was a moon. But this wasn't our friendly, familiar moon. This one was enormous, a colossal silver-white orb, scarred with deep, dark craters that looked like giant, unblinking eyes. It loomed so close it felt like I could reach out and touch its cold, pitted surface. I stepped through the doorway, my sneakers landing not on the hardwood floor of my hallway, but on soft, springy moss that was the color of emeralds. The air was cool and crisp, and everything was bathed in the surreal, purple glow from the sky. I looked behind me, and there it was, my closet door, standing upright in the middle of a field of glowing fungi, looking completely out of place, like a misplaced prop from a school play. The frame of the door shimmered with a faint golden light, the only thing connecting this bizarre world to my own. The thought of it closing and leaving me stranded here sent a jolt of pure panic through me. This world, which I would later learn was called Haytar, was both beautiful and terrifying. Strange plants grew everywhere. Some were tall, spindly trees with leaves that shimmered like silver foil, their branches twisting towards the giant moon as if in prayer. Others were low, pulsing flowers that emitted a soft internal light, dotting the landscape like a field of fallen stars. The silence was unnerving. There were no crickets, no distant traffic, no familiar sounds of my neighborhood. There was only the whisper of the wind through the silver-leaf trees and the soft, rhythmic hum that seemed to emanate from the very ground beneath my feet. It was a symphony of alien nature. I felt incredibly small, a tiny, insignificant speck in this vast, strange world. My jeans and hoodie felt ridiculously inadequate, like I'd shown up to a royal gala in my pajamas. Every shadow seemed to hold a secret. Every rustle of a leaf could be a creature I couldn't possibly imagine. I took a few tentative steps away from the safety of my portal door, the emerald moss squishing softly under my shoes. I had to know more. What was this place? How did I get here? And more importantly, was I alone? The giant silent moon watched me, its cratered face giving away nothing, its presence a constant, intimidating reminder that I was very, very far from home. Driven by a mix of fear and an insatiable curiosity that always got me into trouble, I ventured further from my doorway portal. I entered a forest that looked like something out of a fantasy artist's wildest dreams. The trees were colossal, their bark a smooth, pearlescent white, and their silver leaves rustled with a sound like faint whispers. The light from the giant moon filtered through the canopy, casting long, dancing shadows on the forest floor, which was carpeted in the same glowing moss I'd seen earlier. The air grew cooler here, and the whispering sound intensified, making the hairs on my arms stand on end. It felt like the forest itself was talking, sharing secrets I couldn't understand. I must have walked for what felt like hours, though time seemed to work differently here. My stomach was starting to complain, reminding me that I had missed dinner. It was then that I heard a different sound, not the whispering leaves, but a sharp snap of a twig. I froze, my heart leaping into my throat. I ducked behind one of the massive white trees, peering around its trunk. I wasn't alone. There was a figure moving through the trees, swift and silent. At first, all I could see was a silhouette, but as it moved into a patch of moonlight, I saw it was a girl, probably around my age. She was unlike anyone I had ever seen. She wore clothes made of some kind of dark, tough-looking leather and soft furs, and she carried a short, curved bow in her hand. Her hair was a cascade of dark braids, woven with what looked like small, polished stones that caught the purple light. She moved with a confidence and grace that told me she belonged here. She wasn't a lost tourist like me. This was her world, her forest. She paused, tilting her head as if listening to the whispers of the trees, her expression serious and focused. I held my breath, terrified of being discovered, but of course my legendary clumsiness decided to make an appearance. I shifted my weight and my sneaker came down on a dry, brittle branch. The sound echoed through the silent woods like a gunshot. The girl spun around in an instant, an arrow knocked on her bowstring and aimed directly at my hiding spot before I could even blink. Her eyes, which I could now see were a startling shade of amber, narrowed. "Show yourself," she called out, her voice clear and steady without a hint of fear, "or this arrow will find you whether you hide or not." My adventure had just taken a very sharp, very pointy turn. My hands shot up in the universal sign of "please don't turn me into a human pincushion." I stepped out from behind the tree, feeling about as threatening as a lost puppy. "Whoa, hey, easy with the arrow," I stammered, my voice cracking. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm lost." The girl didn't lower her bow. Her amber eyes scanned me from head to toe, taking in my weird clothes, the faded band logo on my hoodie, my worn-out jeans, my brightly colored sneakers. Her expression was a mixture of suspicion and pure confusion. She had probably never seen anything like me before, which, to be fair, was exactly how I felt about her. "You are not from Haytar," she stated. "It wasn't a question. Your clothes are strange. You smell of metal and cooked sugars, and you walk as loudly as a stumbling growlack." I wasn't sure what a growlack was, but I got the feeling it wasn't a compliment. "My name is Eddie," I said, trying to sound friendly. "And no, I'm definitely not from here. I came through a door." I pointed vaguely in the direction I thought my portal was. She followed my gesture, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes before her gaze snapped back to me, sharp and intense. "A door?" She repeated, the word sounding foreign on her tongue. Slowly, cautiously, she lowered her bow. "My name is Loath," she said, her voice losing some of its edge, "of the Sunstone clan." She watched me for a long moment as if weighing every word I said against the whispers of the forest. The elders speak of gateways, of worlds beyond the purple sky, but none have been seen in many lifetimes. Her curiosity seemed to be winning out over her suspicion. She took a step closer, her movements fluid and silent. "This door you speak of, it brought you to the Whispering Woods." I nodded dumbly, still a little shaky from having an arrow pointed at my chest. "Yeah, it's my closet door." "Back in my world," I explained, feeling ridiculous. "I just opened it, and here I was." Loath tilted her head, a small, almost imperceptible smile touching her lips. "You are an odd creature, Eddie from the closet," she said. The name was weird, but it was better than being a target. A strange sense of relief washed over me. I'd found someone who wasn't trying to eat me. A fragile, tentative friendship began to form in that glowing, whispering forest. A bond forged between two worlds under the watchful gaze of the giant, silent moon. I wasn't completely alone anymore. Loth, it turned out, was as curious about my world as I was about hers. She asked me about the sun I mentioned, a concept that was, honestly, completely foreign in a land of perpetual twilight. I tried to describe blue skies, yellow light, and the warmth of a summer day, and she listened with rapt attention, her amber eyes wide. In return, she told me about Haytar. She told me of the Sunstone clan, her people who lived in caves carved into the side of a great mountain, and how they used glowing crystals to light their homes and grow their food. She described the creatures of the woods, the gentle six-legged grazers and the mischievous winged flitter sprites. But as she spoke, a shadow seemed to pass over her face. Her voice grew quieter, more serious. She told me that Haytar was not as peaceful as it seemed. A darkness was spreading, a creeping dread that had begun to poison the land. It started in the Shadowfen marshes, she explained, her hand instinctively going to the hilt of a small knife at her belt. The water turned black and the light flowers began to wilt. Creatures that were once peaceful have become twisted and aggressive. We call it the gloom. It drains the life and light from everything it touches. Her words sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the cool air. As she spoke, I felt it too. A subtle wrongness in the air, a faint, foul smell on the wind that I hadn't noticed before. The rhythmic hum of the earth seemed weaker here, somehow strained. "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What's causing it?" Loth shook her head, her braids swaying. "No one knows for sure. The elders whisper of an ancient evil, a being of pure shadow and hunger that was imprisoned long ago. They call it the Gloomfang. They say it has awakened." Just as she said the name, a terrifying shriek echoed through the woods, a sound of pure hatred that made my blood run cold. It was close, too close. Loth grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "We have to go, now," she hissed, pulling me along. The whispers of the forest had changed. They were no longer calm or secretive. They sounded panicked, afraid. The shadows around us seemed to deepen, to writhe and stretch as if they were alive. The evil Loth spoke of wasn't just a story or a distant threat. It was here, and it was hunting. Panic is a powerful fuel. We ran. We crashed through the undergrowth, the silver leaves of those great trees blurring into streaks of light. Loth moved with an agility that left me breathless, leaping over fallen logs and weaving through tangled roots as if she had been born to it, which, I guess, she was. I stumbled behind her, my lungs burning, my clumsy earth legs tripping over every possible obstacle. The shriek came again, closer this time, and it was followed by the sound of splintering wood. Something massive was tearing through the forest behind us, and it was gaining ground. "This way!" Loth yelled, pulling me toward a rocky outcrop. We scrambled up the slick stones, finding refuge in a shallow crevice. From our vantage point, we could look back into the woods. The sight made my stomach churn. A wave of darkness was flowing through the trees, a physical manifestation of the gloom. The ground it touched turned black and brittle, the glowing moss fizzling out like dying embers. And in the center of that wave of corruption was a creature. It was huge, at least twice the size of a grizzly bear, and it was made of shifting, semi-solid shadow. It had no definite shape, just a roiling mass of darkness with glowing, malevolent red eyes. The Gloomfang. Loth breathed, her face pale in the purple light. The creature paused, its red eyes scanning the forest. It let out another of those soul-shattering shrieks, and I felt a strange cold pressure in my mind, a whisper of despair that tried to leech away all my hope. But then something even stranger happened. The creature's head, if you could call it that, swiveled. Its glowing red eyes seemed to lock directly onto me. Not onto Loth, who was a native of this world, but onto me. The outsider, the boy from another dimension. It was as if it could sense my connection to another place. The shadow beast began to move in our direction, its form coalescing, becoming more solid as it focused its intent. Tendrils of pure darkness lashed out from its body, smashing trees to splinters. I realized with a sickening certainty that it wasn't just a random monster. It was hunting me specifically. "It knows!" I gasped, the cold pressure in my head intensifying. "It knows I'm not from here." Loth looked from the advancing monster to me, her amber eyes wide with a dawning, terrible understanding. "Your gateway," she said. "It feels the energy. It wants to cross over." There was no time to think, only to run. "My door! We have to get to my door!" I yelled, scrambling out of the crevice. The gloom fang was closing in, and the very air around it felt toxic, filled with hopelessness. Loth didn't hesitate. She led the way, her knowledge of the forest our only advantage. We raced back the way we came, a desperate, frantic retreat toward the shimmering portal that was my only way home. The monster's roars echoed behind us, shaking the ground and making my teeth rattle. I risked a glance over my shoulder and saw the tendrils of shadow reaching for us, stretching, hungry. We burst out of the whispering woods and into the clearing. There it was, my closet door, standing in the field of emerald moss, its frame glowing faintly. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. But the gloom fang was right behind us, emerging from the tree line. It was faster in the open, its shadowy form surging across the mossy ground like a tidal wave of ink. We were not going to make it, not both of us. Loth shoved me towards the portal. "Go, Eddie, close it. Don't let it follow you," she yelled, turning to face the monster, her bow raised once more. My mind screamed at me to stay, to help her, but my body was acting on pure survival instinct. I stumbled through the doorway, landing hard on the familiar wooden floor of my hallway. The smell of mothballs and dust filled my lungs, a scent I'd never been so happy to breathe. I turned back, my hand on the doorknob. Through the open portal, I saw a horrifying scene. Loth fired an arrow which struck the gloom fang and dissolved into harmless light. The monster barely slowed. A thick tendril of shadow lashed out and slammed into her, sending her flying. She hit the ground and didn't move. Panic and terror gave me a surge of adrenaline. The gloom fang was less than 20 feet from the portal, its red eyes fixed on me on the pathway to my world. I could feel its cold, malevolent presence reaching across the threshold. With a sob, I slammed the door shut. The world of Haytar vanished. The purple sky was gone. There was only the solid, white-painted wood of my closet door. The humming stopped. The air settled. I was safe. I was home. But I had left Loth behind, alone and injured, at the mercy of that thing. The silence of my house was deafening. I sat there on the floor of my hallway for a long time, my back pressed against the closet door, my body trembling. The image of Loth being struck down, of the gloomfang's red eyes burning with hunger, was seared into my brain. Guilt gnawed at me, a cold, heavy stone in my stomach. I had run. I had saved myself and abandoned my first and only friend in that terrifying world. But what could I have done? I was just a kid with a hoodie and a weird magical ability I didn't understand. I was no hero. But I couldn't just leave her there. I couldn't let that monster win, especially if it was trying to get into my world. The next day at school was a blur. I couldn't focus on lectures about the Pythagorean theorem or the socio-economic causes of World War I. All I could see was a purple sky and a brave girl with amber eyes. I knew I couldn't do this alone. I needed help. I needed my friends. After school, I gathered them in my garage. Maya, the super smart tech genius who could probably build a rocket out of a toaster and some paper clips, and Liam, the captain of the soccer team, who was strong, steady, and impossibly loyal. They were my team, my own small clan. "Okay, guys," I started, pacing back and forth in front of an old lawnmower. "You're going to think I'm crazy, and honestly, I think I might be, but you have to listen to me." They exchanged worried glances. I took a deep breath and told them everything. I told them about the tingle in my hand, the closet door, the world of Haytar, the giant moon, the whispering woods, Loth, and the terrifying shadow monster, the gloomfang. I expected them to laugh, to call a doctor, to slowly back away. But they just listened, their expressions growing more serious with every word. When I finished, silence hung in the air, thick with the smell of gasoline and cut grass. Liam was the first to speak. "A shadow monster? Seriously?" he asked, but there was no mockery in his voice, only disbelief. Maya, however, was tapping on her phone, her brow furrowed in concentration. "A localized energy fluctuation," she muttered. "Interdimensional portal. It's theoretically possible, if highly improbable." "Eddie, did you say the door hummed? What was the frequency?" Leave it to Maya to try and find a scientific explanation for magic. But they didn't dismiss me. They believed me, or at least they were willing to. "I have to go back," I said, my voice firm. "I can't leave Loth there. And that thing, It wanted to come through. What if it finds another way? What if it follows me here? The thought was terrifying. The Gloomfang loose in my town, in my world. Liam clenched his fists, his jaw set. "You're not going alone," he said, his loyalty shining through. "If there's a monster, we fight it, together." Maya looked up from her phone, a determined glint in her eyes. "Agreed, but we're not going in blind. We need a plan and gear." She immediately started rattling off a list of things we'd need. High-lumen flashlights, communication devices, first aid kits, and something about portable energy sensors. So we spent the rest of the afternoon preparing for an interdimensional rescue mission. It was the most surreal experience of my life. Liam filled backpacks with bottled water, protein bars, and a couple of heavy aluminum baseball bats for, smaller shadow things, he explained. Maya worked her magic, modifying a set of old walkie-talkies to work on what she hoped would be a stable frequency, and jury-rigging powerful LED lights onto bike helmets. I was in charge of being the key. My only job was to open the door again. The thought made my stomach do flip-flops. As evening fell, we stood before the closet door in my hallway. It looked so normal, so innocent, but we all knew what lay beyond it. My friends looked at me, their faces a mixture of fear and resolve. They were trusting me, following me into a world of monsters and magic based on my crazy story. I had never felt so responsible or so grateful. I placed my hand on the doorknob, the familiar tingle spreading through my arm, warmer and stronger this time, as if it was responding to my determination. "Ready?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Liam gripped his bat. Maya adjusted her helmet. They both nodded. "For Loth," Liam said. "And for Haytar," Maya added. I took a deep breath, turned the knob and pulled. The gateway to Haytar swung open, revealing the swirling purple sky and the giant cratered moon. The air that flowed out was still cool and smelled of damp earth, but now it was tinged with the scent of smoke and despair. The gloom was spreading. We didn't know what we would find or if Loth was even still alive, but we were going in together. My portal adventure had become our mission and we were ready to fight.